I'm kindly asking all journalists to please send your recorders forward. Please send your recorders forward. We'll start today's press briefing with individual silent prayers. Amen and amen. You kindly put your phones on vibrate or silent mode. The news brief for today, Thursday, the 1st of September 2022. His Excellency President Dr. Julius Maada has yesterday, the 31st of August, visited the Looking Town and Covert communities east of the capital, Freetown, to console families who lost 6 of their loved ones to the flash floods and mudslide of 28 August 2022. The Minister of Information and Communications, Mohammed Mudslide, has on Tuesday, August 30th, played host to Dr. Wange, a Kenyan media consultant who is widely known in Africa for his work in developing media reforms. Dr. Wange's visit to Sierra Leone is to support the implementation of the 7 recommendations that were made during the National Media Viability and Investment Conference. His Excellency, President Dr. Julius Maada has on Tuesday, 30th August, met with members of the Sierra Leone Labour Congress, saying that although bad politics seem to be dividing the nation, he has set out on a nationwide engagement with critical groups to sustain dialogue. The Media Reform Coordinating Group Sierra Leone, MRCG, has on Friday, the 26th of August, held a one-day workshop on the safety of journalists in Sierra Leone at the Cultural Radio Complex, Grafton Village. The development of a safety policy for media practitioners will ensure to promote the safety of journalists. And lastly, the Ministry of Social Welfare has in a press briefing on Tuesday, 30th August, updated the public on the status of children that were arrested during the August 10th demonstration. We now call on the Deputy Minister of Information and Communications, Mr. Solomon Jamilu, to introduce our guest for today.
Thank you, Nancy. On behalf of Minister Swari, Minister of Information and Communications, let me welcome 2 very prominent institutions represented here today. First, on the National Disaster Management Agency, represented by one of our own, Mohammed Elba, Director of Communications. We know it's been busy times for you and the agency, as well as John K. Ansumana, Deputy Director of Education Management Information Systems for the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education. These 2 institutions are represented here today at today's press briefing to share with us very key and important highlights. First, on disaster management, looking specifically at the events of August 28th, but also, broadly speaking, to look at the mandates again of MDMA. As we know, that institution was set up to prevent, but also to respond to disasters, and disasters could be of a wide range. It could be environmental, human, material, and our distinguished Mohammed Elba is representing NDMA, and he will be taking us through very key highlights relating to their specific interventions for August 28th, but looking at the broader picture. And Mr. John K. Ansumana will be talking to us about the recently concluded school census and what that means for government's program with regards to free quality education. As we are fully aware, His Excellency the President, retired Brigadier Dr. Julius Maada remains firmly committed to making sure that Sierra Leone projects itself as a resilient nation and bouncing back from disaster, but also looking into the future, what we need to do to ensure that we change the narratives when it comes to disaster in Sierra Leone. And all of this is happening when we look at the wider global context, a country like Pakistan, reporting that almost 1/3 of the nation is underwater, countries realizing unprecedented levels of flood and other disasters. And this is happening, I think, pretty much in most parts of the world. So Sierra Leone is having also its own fair share of disaster, but I think that we would have had of a significant size and proportion larger than what we have now, had it not been for the proactive steps of agencies like the National Disaster Management Agency. Without further ado, let me give the floor. Who's doing the first presentation? Let me give the floor to our own Mohammed Elba, Director of Communications, to take us through highlights on NDN. Mohammed.
The Honorable Deputy Minister of Information and Communications, staff of the MIC, colleague journalists, good afternoon. I am Mohammed Elba, the Director of Communications at the National Disaster Management Agency. As you may have heard from the Deputy Minister, we're here this afternoon to actually give you update on the incident that occurred on the 28th of August 2022 relating to the flood in Freetown and also the Mudslide at Lukin Town. Before that, like the Deputy Minister rightly pointed out, the National Disaster Management Agency was established by an Act of Parliament in 2019. It was officially launched on the 19th of November 2020 by His Excellency the President, retired Brigadier Julius Maada Bio, to effectively manage issues relating to disasters across the country, and also to enhance the capacity of communities to effectively respond to disasters within their own localities. Since the agency was established, we've been able to respond to over 20,000 population across the country, victims who have suffered from windstorm, fire incidents, and of course flooding across the country. We have been able to respond to a total number of above 20,000 so far. And we've also been able to do a lot of risk mitigation activities across the country, so that we are not only there to respond to disasters, but we are also there to ensure that we mitigate the occurrence of disasters in communities, and of course targeting specifically national infrastructures also. So the presentation is going to focus on the 28th incident. Of course, we all know that you all will recall that on the 28th, of course, 6 people died at Lukin Town as a result of a slope collapse. And of course, there was also 2 deaths reported, one from Mount Oriel, and an 18-year-old who actually was inside his house sleeping. And of course, there was a fence collapse. The house was beneath the fence, and of course, also he lost his life during the process. There was also another fence collapse at Blackwell Road, and so far we've identified 18 communities that got flooded, in Freetown on that day, and we are, currently doing assessments to be able to ascertain, the extent to which people suffered from that particular flood on the 20th. So on that note, without wasting much time, I will now call on the I beg your pardon, let me just introduce my team. I should have done that. I'm here with the Director of Research, Monitoring and Evaluation, Director Obaka Bangura. You can just raise your hand so that 2022. I'm also here with the Deputy Director of Communications, NDMA Philomena Toure. Bamba Kone is also a communication officer, and Joseph Sise attached to the communications unit. And can you introduce yourself? Maule Toure. She's attached at the Directorate of Monitoring and Evaluation and Research. So on that note, I will now call on Director Abubakar Bangra to come and because it's going to be we are going to do it simultaneously, the presentation, but you will have to take the first shot. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Director Abubakar Bangra.
Standing on existing protocols and because of time, let's go. Without display. We had already built an annual hazard calendar which guides us on what we are to expect. As we see, we are in flooding now, and soon we'll move from flooding to windstorms across the country. So if you are with us and we are in this disaster risk reduction exercise, we should prepare ourselves for windstorms as we get into September. Like yesterday, we had a report in Makali or so in Makeni, wherein we had a lot of windstorms here in Makeni town that has destroyed houses and homes. So what we'll do is we'll make this one available to the media so that we can be tracking some of these things and you can be asking us what is NDMA doing with regards to some of these things, because it's not always the president should be visiting communities after disasters happen. I know you will be planning some questions for us. What have you been doing to save lives? Let's go. For 2022, these were the activities that NDMA planned, and these are some of the activities that we are doing at the moment to save lives. Some of these things, we cannot see them easily because once lives are saved, it's difficult for people to follow up on them. But one thing we decided to look at was anticipatory actions on critical national infrastructure. These are infrastructures who, if anything happens to them, our economy will be brought to zero. One of them is Guma. If Guma goes without water, the city will be brought to a halt. Another is our fuel depot, which brings in fuel into the country. If that station goes, if that depot has any issues, the country will be ground to a halt. Let's take Aberdeen Bridge. If something goes wrong with Aberdeen Bridge, it will cost people living in Aberdeen a lot of money to move.
Yeah, in addition to that, yes, we identified the critical national infrastructure, and of course, one was the fuel depot. We did not just identify it, we went there, and of course, there's a very nice report that we put together for the attention of the Chief Minister. Of course, you recall that sometime in March, we went there, we did our reports and assessment. And of course, we were tasked to actually develop a relocation plan, and that also has been done. We have presented also that to the Chief Minister, because like Director Bangura is saying, should anything happen to that particular depot, let's just forget about the depot. But if you go down there and you look at how people have constructed makeshift structures and how they are crisscrossing among those pipes, carrying huge quantum amount of fuel on a daily basis, you really know that this is a disaster waiting to happen. And we don't want to wait until such a time. So by the special grace of God, and we are hopeful that the Chief Minister will actually look into some of the recommendations emanated from our assessments that we did. Same also for Guma. We went there, and of course it was as a result of our intervention, drawing government attention to the dangers lying ahead, on the existence of Guma, that if we do not take actions now, and should anything happen to Guma, of course we all know Freetown will go without water, and we all know what that means. So President went there upon our report and assessment, and we were able to ensure that a whole committee was established to ensure, currently as I'm talking to you, everybody that has constructed houses around that particular place has been instructed to bring their original copies of their building permits and all of that. We are currently receiving those documents at the moment for the attention of that particular committee. So it is not just the identification, we have taken also critical steps to ensure that we forestall whatever inimical activity that will be before those particular infrastructure.
Yeah. Another thing we are doing is we are building early warning systems. Very soon we will launch the Kongosa tool. The tool is designed to send text messages or voice messages in an event your community wants to flood, so that you can move people early. We are at the final stages. We received some small funding from Action Against Hunger, and we worked with a Sierra Leone-based technology firm to build that tool. What we are going to do with that tool is to get volunteers, everybody in these communities, to be registered with us, so that if at all your community is facing any disaster, any risk or hazard that might generate a disaster, you report it to us, and then when the alert is enough for us to generate a message, we will send text messages to people in that community. So for instance, if you are registered in Krube and Krube wants to flood, you receive that text message. We are expecting Krube to flood. Can you move out? So we want you to prepare for the launching of that particular early warning tool. Another thing we are doing, which I think maybe the people from education will comment on, we want to mainstream disaster education in primary and secondary schools. We want the children to know what it means to save yourself from hazards and risks, so that when they grow up with it, by the time we have those people becoming graduates and senior citizens, disaster risk management decisions will be on the forefront of the development agenda, and it will help us. Yeah.
Yeah, also for the establishment of Chiefdom disaster management committees, it also falls within the remit of National Disaster Management Agency. We are to establish, Chiefdom disaster management committees and also district disaster management committees. With the support of UNDP, we have established huge amounts of those. We have not been able to cover the entire country so far, but we have covered at least over 10, across the country. So those committees are there. We have trained them with the requisite skills to ensure that they are able to, mitigate whatever disaster that is looming within their own communities. And of course, also with regards to fuel, we also did sometime last February. We also did a research on the petrol stations, in the entire country that are operating. So what, the idea behind that was we want to ensure that those filling stations are operating, with this requisite standard. We ensure, of course, we developed a questionnaire, we gave our enumerators, they went to the field, and we have presented our report to PRA for action with very strong recommendations. Say, for example, some of the questions in the questionnaire, contained in the questionnaire, like, for example, because you need to have a very high wall, so in the case of fire outbreak, the fire will not actually, proceed to the neighboring houses, for example. So we've done that also. So we will come to the areas where we have mapped, within Freetown that we consider to be disaster-prone communities. cases.
Yeah. If I can run you briefly through some of the slides, these are some of the disasters we've been managing, the hazards that we are stopping to become disasters. On the road to Regent, if you take a look at that one, someone took an excavator and was trying to level the land close to a bridge. We had to stop them.
Yeah.
At Angola Town, someone wanted to bank that drainage. If that was going to happen, that place was going to flood this year. Here, you see someone digging a well in the embankment of a bridge. And in that one, it's somewhere in Grafton, where, if you notice, those of us who are working in the east, someone has built a fence that is causing water after the fuel station in on the Grafton, close to the station. Someone has, close to the Grafton police barracks, someone has built a fence that is causing water to come to the street.
Sure.
That was the time we were looking at that particular area. If we go forward, at the start of the year, this was like the mapping we did across the city. We mapped the city. We had areas we mapped as critical, high, medium, and low. And interestingly, most of the areas we mapped as critical and high, we did some remedial actions that those places are not flooding at the moment. One of them is Moaf. Moaf used to flood every year. Because we mapped it as critical, Bolori gave the youths in the community some funds, and we also tried to look at what was the problem that was causing the flooding. The problem was the keke riders were depositing their waste at the top of the drainage every night, so that in the morning when it rains, it washes it. That was how Moaf was flooding every year. We tried to address that one. We called the authorities that were concerned to book. And this year, when we are hearing of flooding, Moaf is safe.
Literally.
It's literally safe. If we can go on, this is like a map of the incident points that happened across the city on this 28th. This is a summary of what happened on the 28th. We have 18 affected communities, 7 fatalities.
Sorry, please, this should be 8.
Yeah, it should be 8 fatalities now, yes. And then what we are noticing is we are having flash floods in low-lying areas and slopes and infrastructure collapse in the high ends of the city. That has to do a lot with construction and engineers and contractors. Most of the fatalities we are recording is retaining walls or fences collapsing on people that are living beneath. So if we want to stop some of these disasters, it goes beyond government. It also has to do with us, the citizens. This is a summary of the things that we have highlighted that are causing the flooding and the slope failure. One of them is poor urban planning, poor waste management. We see people reclaiming swamps and banking waterways for construction. You will think it's only in Freetown. If you go to Bo today, people are banking swamps, and those swamps are flooding. If you go to Kenema, it's the same thing. If you go to Makeni, people are not only banking swamps, they are banking swamps and putting fuel stations in them. So if that fuel station floods, we are not only going to cause a flood, if that fuel gets into the water and goes downstream and you have a blaze, it's a disaster waiting to happen. Government will want to take the appropriate action, but the question is, are we as citizens ready for government's actions to prevent disasters? Are we as citizens ready? This is ground zero, the Looking Town area. If we look at this image, the house where we had the 6 fatalities is buried down here. And look at boulders hanging up there still. As an agency, we visited these places. We've told the people in those houses to voluntarily relocate. If government wants to use force now to move them for their own lives, what will be the action of the citizenry? This is a question I will leave with us. we have several scenarios like this. If we could go back a bit to look at the fuel situation in this image down here, no, the one down. Each of those tanks has 8 million liters of fuel. People have built shacks underneath it, and they have not stopped. They are mining the clay under the tanks to build their houses. If government decides these people should move, what will be the action of us as citizens? These are some of the questions NDMA is asking. Let's move because of time. This is Moab. Sorry, this is Kaneke and Colbert. What we have noticed is there is a waste dump on top. This one, the image down, and there is a stream running through it. Some way, somehow, the flooding that happened was a function of the waste material being pushed into the waterway, and that caused the water to build up, and it built up, and then when the bank broke, this area flooded. Now, if government decides we want to relocate Kaneke, what will be the political backlash to that action? These are questions, before you ask me, I want to pose it to our consciences.
Yeah, so the scene at look in town. So we also want you to note that we are currently working with the Ministry of Works to ensure that this boulder here is brought down. So that because it poses a lot of risk at the moment, especially for these houses here. So we are working with the Ministry of SNRA and the Ministry of Works for us to actually see how we could bring this particular boulder down. We are working on that now because we want to leave there. This is a disaster waiting to happen here. And the people inside here and up here, they've all been relocated. We've asked them to relocate. All of them. Yeah, because of course, as you can see, there has been compromised already. So there is no way, you understand. These people here, we are digging here beneath this hill to reclaim land and build. So what that does was that the cover, the forest cover, was compromised. So over the years, when it rains, and of course, it has actually softened the ground, so it led to the slope collapse.
What NDMA has done over the few days was we did an emergency response, we did some evacuations. At the current moment, we are completing our field assessment so that we can give a clear picture of those who are affected by the disasters, and then we are holding coordination meetings, and then we'll respond in a way in which we will save further lives. I know we are to talk today on what happened on the 28th, but most often than not, when we come to the media, we only talk about our responses. We don't talk about our risk reduction activities. That was the reason why we decided to give you some of the activities we are doing to save lives that are probably not within the knowledge of the citizenry. It's the same area around that place. Look at another boulder that we identified. And these houses are all in the path of that boulder. This is the new road they are building. Yes, you will think that's the hill bypass road. You will think it was only that area that it happened. On the hill bypass road, we saw similar things like this, and this is an area where we have been doing our risk reduction activities. This house is also on the hill bypass. It's compromised. We've told those houses to relocate. This is Moiba. This one is, if I go back, this one is another incident. There was a collapse at back of the American Embassy, wherein a fence collapsed and 2 people died some time ago. We have also visited those areas. If you take the Regent Grafton Road, the Chinese excavated one end of the hill to make the place level for the other end. And now citizens are building very expensive houses on loose earth. anytime I drive on that road, anytime we visit the Chinese in our engagement with them, they always mention their dam and the fact that this end of the road was not meant to be used for construction, because it's just a matter of time it will fail. These are some of our recommendations.
Yeah, sure. Of course, we all know the challenges in Freetown, so we put together some recommendations. Well, it's just for you to note, by the way, and we will continue to work with the relevant authorities to ensure that we get it right, even though it's very, very challenging. Review of Freetown stormwater management, and of course, we all know that we need to actually review policies, regarding our water management in Freetown. Intensive community engagement, of catchments that is ongoing at the moment. We have been doing a series of community engagements. We also need the public to know that it is very important that they too should be adhering to directives. Because by doing that, they will definitely reduce the work of NDMA. Urban waste management, that is a major challenge across the city and across the county. Waste management issues is a major. Some communities don't even have waste management; they don't have dumping sites. So they devise strategies within their communities to manage their waste. Most times that is the reason why they actually throw dirt into drainages and all of that. So that's also is another area we need to concentrate seriously. Strengthening of land governance, of course, and planning. The Ministry of Lands, they are currently part of a particular pillar, a very critical pillar at the NDMA, and they are heading that pillar, you understand? Because if we go out there and ask people not to construct houses, for example, beyond demarcated zones, those people always produce valid building permits, you understand? So that is the reason why we need to work closely with the Ministry of Lands to ensure that once they are giving out building permits, they should do so, in ensuring that that particular area is fit and proper for construction. And of course, identifying of tree planting. So we also want to encourage citizens to actually do tree planting frequently, because we all know how that's, the significance of that. Back to the 28th on the Looking Town incident, I just want to add that on the very day the NDMA was on ground, and of course we ensured that we helped the community people to actually retrieve the dead bodies, 6 of them, and we were there together with the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary School Education. We used their vehicle to ensure that those bodies were brought to Connaught Hospital. And of course, 2 days later, NDMA provided funds and vehicle and fuel to ensure that those dead bodies are traveled to their various destinations. I think most of them came from all country. So we ensured that we took that responsibility. So I will state here clearly that NDMA is proud to say that those 6 persons have been buried, and NDMA did that. Then of course also for those that were injured, we are continuously monitoring them to ensure that they are given the treatment they deserve in terms of medical care. The Ministry of Health and Sanitation pillar, the medical pillar was activated on that day, and it is actually being headed by the Ministry of Health and Sanitation. So just an addendum to that.
I think we are.
Yeah, so on the 28th, the assessment is ongoing at the moment, and of course the public, hopefully by tomorrow we will have completed the assessment, so the public will get to know how many, for example, the total population affected by the August 28th incident, that is 1, then 2, the areas affected, the name of the areas affected, the number of school pupils, for example, one school is going to reopen shortly, and that we want to know because there are some donors out there who may want to come in, and help. So, but they want to know, the data and how they will be able to come on board to actually help. So that data will be out by tomorrow. It's huge. That is why, we are, it has taken this time. We want to appeal to the public that the data, by the special grace of God, will be released tomorrow. So while we wait your questions, thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the team from NDMA for sharing with us this. Before we transition to the next speaker, I kindly request a moment of silence for those precious lives lost I was not going to ask them to rise, but since our colleagues have stood, I will just ask all of us now, please. And thank you very much for the courtesy. May their souls rest in perfect peace. Thank you. So having heard from Elba and Director Ahura it's now my pleasure to bring on Deputy Director and Sumana to talk to us. As we know, with the rollout of free education, it is important that we also embrace relevant interventions to add that layer of quality. Amongst those very important variables is data, and that is largely now informed by a recently concluded school census that was done. And so without further ado, let me call on Deputy Director and Sumana to come and share with us that very important development. Thank you.
Okay, good day all. We are from the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education. There is no doubt the government's flagship program. Representing the ministry here is Verifos, myself, J.K. and Sumana, and we have the Communications Director, Mr. Bami Anthony, and a staff from our situation room, Daniel Samkin. Let me first of all bring you greetings from the Honorable Minister and leadership of the ministry, who for multiple and committing engagements will not make it up to this all-important meeting. But rest assured, the ministry is well represented with just the three of us, unlike NDMA that came in their numbers. We've been tasked to take you through the adult school census, which is one of the strongest efforts that we do make to collect school level data and statistics for one, national consumption, and two, for international comparison. Year in, year out, we do provide education statistics to UNESCO Institute of Statistics for them to be able to comparatively measure our performance as a country compared to other countries. And also, our development partners do wait for this data for their planning purposes. And certain enough, this is what we use to run the show for the free quality school education, which is undoubtedly the flagship program, as I said, for the government. So in 2021, we again conducted the annual school census, and we're about to show you the key findings of the school census, while at the same time doing justice to the request that was made to take you through comparative analysis of what has been going on in education from 2018 to 2021. And I just want to beg your pardon to bear with me a little while. We had over 50 slides, but it was cut down to 25. So we're running through. I mean, rest assured, we're going to be fine with that. So let me start off by taking you through what we have as mission and vision, right? The mission of Mbssc is to provide equal opportunity to access quality, basic, technical, vocational, and higher education that enables learners to participate in public life, contribute to national and global economy, and fulfill their potential. We have a vision to facilitate and support the cognitive, psychosocial, and physical development of all children, and to ensure safe learning environments that are inclusive and well-resourced. The annual school census, otherwise referred to as ASC, is a strategic effort of the ministry to collect education data and statistics for education development, planning and policy interventions, and to support the activities of partners. Data collection on school infrastructure, facilities, teachers, enrollment, leadership, textbooks, internal efficiencies, that is transition rates, completion rates, gross enrollment, etc. And also is an exercise conducted yearly to provide the official education data and statistics for both national and international comparison. It's used as an international benchmark to assess our country's status quo. The ASC 2021 report provides insight on many issues of school growth, school performance, and strategies for education transformation in Sierra Leone. The report provides analysis and interpretation of the collected data to inform national understanding of trends in school development and enrollment growth, numeracy, retention, literacy, transition, and multi-level performance. Education service delivery is informed by accurate, reliable data and statistics. The data collection exercise we had in 2021 lasted for 4 weeks. That is the field exercise. Besides the planning stage and the back-end exercise that we do, we're in field for 4 weeks, and we engaged for 450 participants, including national coordinators, district coordinators, district supervisors, and enumerators. And the report, we divided it into 3 parts: the introductory part, the field methodology, and the main body of the report that gives the highlight and statistics of the 2021 performance. This is just a snapshot of the number of schools that we visited during the 2021 annual school census from the respective districts. And if you can see, we have more schools in Western area urban as compared to the other districts. Western area urban has 1,779 schools, and the least is that of Bomb with 329 schools. From the annual school census of 2021, we have these key findings. We found out that there were 12,168 schools probably that we visited. It could be more schools or some schools not tapped into, but we have 12,168 schools visited, and we recorded 80,744 teachers with an average class size of 59. We recorded 3.1 million pupils enrolled in school, with a distribution of 49% being boys and 51% being girls. And of these, 27,368 children were identified with various forms of disabilities, including physical, hearing, visual, and the hunchbacks, dwarfs as disabled people in the school. Then we recorded 950 visibly pregnant schoolgirls in the various levels of school, starting from the primary, the least being from class 4, up to the senior secondary school in SS3. We recorded 389,283 people that are benefiting from the school feeding program, which is part of the free quality school education package, and also had schools reporting incidents of sexual and gender-based violence, which amounted to 101 schools. We have 8,882 schools reported having access to drinking water, which accounts for 73% of the school population, and 2,920 schools have access to electricity. We recorded the number of schools being increased by 9.3% as compared to what we scored in 2020. In 2020, we recorded 11,034 schools, and in 2021, we recorded 12,168 schools with a 9% increase. And of course, enrollment also increased from 2.6 million in 2020 to 3.1 million in 2021. And as we said, we recorded 80,744 teachers across all levels and all school types, this being both public and private schools. And out of these schools, 12,168, we had 83% of these schools, accounting for 10,124 as public schools, and 17% accounting for 2,044 as private schools. And in this case, public schools include all missions, community school, government assisted schools as public schools, and the others are private schools. More than half of the schools, that is 61%, accounting for 7,429 with primary schools, and 1,984 accounting for 16.3% of these schools with pre-primary, and 15.7% were GSS, and 6.7% were SS schools. This is an indication of the distribution of the schools by local councils, and by levels, that is pre-primary, primary, GSS, and SSS, with the respective local councils, and as per private and public. There's a snapshot. The data is available. We can make it readily available for you to share and for further consumption. And also, just this gives a clear and easy view of the data I just showed you about private schools and public schools and the respective levels.
Digital disaster.
Okay, and thank you. So this gives us the distribution of pupils in school by enrollment and gender, boys and girls, in the various levels, pre-primary through SS, and by councils. So this is the distribution of schools from 2018 to 2021. In 2018, we recorded 10,747 schools, and in 2021, we recorded 12,168 schools. And then you can see the trend, the growth, as to how the schools were moving in terms of numbers within this period, since the inception of the free quality school education program. So we also do approve schools to give them the mandate to operate formally. So these are the records of schools being approved from 2018 to 2021. Enrollment in schools, we had 1.9 million kids in 2018, and in 2021 we have 3.1 million kids now in school. Tells you, because of the access that we have provided schools across the country and the ambience of the free quality school education program, it's been attracted to the public, and more kids are now going back to school, including the out of school, including the dropouts, and even with the pregnant girls who were normally being victimized, now have the opportunity to go to school. So enrollment has increased in school. This gives us the distribution of the schools by gender, boys and girls for the various levels. We have it for pre-primary, primary, JSS, and SSS. And if you can see the trend, you begin to realize that we are fast approaching gender parity in schools to get equal number of boys and girls in school. In the pre-primary, we love our daughters mostly, so we get more of our girls to go to pre-primary school, unlike the boys. So we have more girls in pre-primary school than in the primary. In primary, we have almost equal numbers, 96 and 99, almost equal numbers of boys and girls in school to get gender parity. And this also goes for JSS. It's different for the SSS to get more boys and girls in school. Of course, we know some of the reasons why we have more boys and girls at the senior level, marriage and early pregnancies, and a lot of reasons that will take the girls out of school. And we get next to the enrollment rates. Yeah. This is the intake rate, that is total number of pupils that we absorb into school at the first grade of each level. Now you want to get to Form 1, the total number of pupils that we absorb into the first grade at that level. So it gives you the distribution from 2018 through 2021. And also we have that for the last grade, the completion rates, total number of pupils that are completing a particular cohort. As we all understand, not all of us that will start a particular class will finish at the same time. Some will drop out, and some, for some other reasons, will not continue or will have to repeat consistently in school. So this gives the completion rate of boys and girls in schools. Transition rate, the rate at which we move from one level to another. We've just had the MPSC results, and a bunch of them moving from primary level into the junior secondary school. So that's a transition. So check from primary to JSS level, and also from the JSS level to SSS. We expand the JSS to SSS after getting the Becker results. Most students want to get into the senior school level. And of course, retention rate, the rate at which we retain guys in school, which has improved significantly over the years compared to 2018. We also have distribution of teachers. We know teachers play a very unique role in that triangle of the free quality school education program. So we also do make mention of the total number of teachers that we have. And you heard me say we have recorded about 80,744 teachers in 2021, and as distributed in this diagram. We also have we have two sets of teachers here. We have the qualified teachers, and we have the normal teachers who probably do have a BS and the like, but if you do not have the teacher's certificate, they will not refer to you as a qualified teacher. So we do measure the qualified teacher pupil ratio and the pupil teacher ratio to get a real view of our safety in the schools. So this gives us a distribution of teachers, qualified teachers, between 2018 and 2021. So like I said, you see the pupil teacher ratio and the pupil qualified teacher ratio. When you look at the pupil teacher ratio, you realize that the figures are relatively low because all teachers are being counted into that bracket. When you look at the pupil qualified teacher ratios, means we have less qualified teachers in school. Therefore, the number of pupils assigned to qualified teacher increases. So you see the figures. And we also, as part of our interest and mandates, look after disabilities and, of course, the pregnant girls in schools. So we have these statistics of disabilities in schools, with 27% of our kids having visual impairment, 25% having learning impairment, and 1% physically impairment. And the statistics is as thus. And for the pregnant girls, we have the least being recorded in class 5, though we have kids also from class 4. So this is a distribution of the pregnant girls that we recorded in 2021 during the annual school census. There are two seasons where we do record pregnant girls during the public exams and also during our annual school censuses to get, a snapshot of what's happening in the school with regards to sexual, gender-based violence, pregnancies, and the like. We collect such statistics. And now into the free quality school education package. We're all aware of the fact that in August 2018, His Excellency the President pronounced this very interesting package for us in education, and having that as the government flagship program. It has the provision to pay fees and admission for kids in preschool through senior secondary school in all government and government-assisted schools. Of course, we pay examination fees for all public exams for Mbssc, Mbssc, and WAS. We provide textbooks, core textbooks to pupils in school, and provide teaching and learning materials, including exercise books for our kids in school. We'll also show you the distribution of textbook ratios. Provision of school feeding to deprived communities across the country. And some provisions and gains that we've had from the free quality school education include additionally, government has provided school buses. We provided buses to ease transportation and minimize some of the risk we already know with these Okada riders, Keke riders taking our girls to schools. And also introduce technology in education transformation drive. To start with, we have transgressed from using the rudimentary paper-based version in our data collection to that of using digital platform. We use smartphones, we use tablets to collect our data. And to an extent, we have even trained heads of schools in senior secondary schools and have given them tablets. We've also issued out tablets to junior secondary school principals to ensure they help us with data collection from source. We've also had a result checker. That is the 468 trigger that you can use on your phone to check results instead of going to WIAC to buy a scratch card to check your results. You can use that trigger to check for all public exams. And that eases the burden also on parents. We've also digitized, of course, we've said that the annual school census and also school feeding assessment. We're using tablets in almost all of what we're doing now at the ministry. We have intention, and it started already, to give 1 tablet per school, and also have the JICA project to connect all schools with internet connectivity. As I speak now, we are piloting 500 schools across the country to ensure that they are fully connected, and also working with partners. We work with Knowledge Aid, we work with ST Microfination to ensure that we support schools with computers and internet facilities. We have developed 2 new platforms. The one is the annual census tool that is currently in the test phase. It's on tablets. We've got these tablets with a product that we are going to give to all the paramount chiefs, and we have stored data in this tablet from 2015 to 2021. So you can check a whole lot of information about schools, about the enrollment, gender parity, about students, about the school map, the locations, because in the conduct of the annual school census, we use GPS facilities to locate the schools. So with these, you can also tap and check on the location of each of the schools. And also, we have the Learning Passport, which is a unique tool and first of its kind in the history of Ministry of Education. The Learning Passport is also inputted on the tablets that we will give out to paramount chiefs and other education stakeholders. The Learning Passport has got public exam questions for Mbssc, Mbssc, and WAS from 2010 to 2021. So in other words, it eases the burden of you going to WIAC, say, oh, I want past paper, I want this from the beginning. You can just go through the Learning Passport and you have all the past questions. And not only the past questions you have there are answers to the questions. So at the end of the exercise, when you finish the exercise, automatically you can see your answers to assess your performance. So we've also developed that, and it's in this tablet as well. We have, well, thousands of these tablets, proud to say, that we're going to issue out to our key stakeholders to ensure that they keep up with the trend. And certainly without exaggeration, I'm here with the manager from the radio station, and it's no news that we've started up the education radio program since 2018 to support accelerated learning and to work in concert with what NDMA is doing, disaster agency, that in an event of one such crisis, where we cannot have one-on-one touch with the kids in school, we're going to use education radio to do radio teaching and even television teaching programs, as the case may be. So this is part of what government has been spending on fees and subsidies. It's a very huge amount, and we are the first to look at this kind of data because this is the first conversion Ministry of Finance has done using the new leons. They used to have it in billions. Now we've converted everything into the new leons. So you see from 2018, the fiscal year of 2018, we have these payments as of 30,436 for all schools. And 2022, the last payment we made, in total we paid 510 million for that in terms of fees and subsidies to school, which means government is spending a lot to support the school and easing up the burden from parents in paying fees for the kids, and also supporting them with school infrastructure, furniture, wash facilities. We're doing boreholes in school, trying to maintain some toilet facilities in schools, a whole lot of things that we are doing as part of this process. We also do pay examination fees. Like I made mention earlier in the FPSC package, that these are part of the things that we will do. So you see the amount government is spending per year for each of these exams, and even the number of candidates that we are sending for each of the exams, and the cost per examination fee. Here we used to pay 162 leons or 162,000 then for WAS. Now it's gone to 295,000 per candidate for WAS, and you see the number of candidates that government is paying for per year. So this is the cost and the financial data with regards to payment of examination fees. We also have an interesting set in this process, which is the teacher aspect. And with teachers, we're working directly with the Teaching Service Commission, who's done a lot to recruit and replace over 10,878 teachers from 2018 to 2022. And also, we've reassessed teachers. The reassessment is if you enter with a TC certificate in the school, then over the year you have acquired HTC or Bachelor's in Education, the need is urgent for us to reassess your standard because you are no longer going to be paid as a TC holder, but then you are expected to be paid as a graduate. So we do all of this reassessment. That's part of the motivation scheme to ensure that we empower the teachers in schools. So we've done that for 5,251 teachers across the countries. And not only that, people go out of the system. So when they retire, we also knock them out and allow new actors to be on board. So we've had 711 retirees that have been replaced within the course of 2022. Then we're also working on the increase of salary for teachers from 2019 with a 10% increase on the transport allowance that we pay to teachers from grade 1 to 6. And also 30% increment in salary was paid in April of 2020 to all teachers in government and government-assisted schools. Of course, we have negotiation with SLTU resulting to the 45% increase in the over a 3-year period commencing in January of 2022. We've already signed a collective agreement for 2022 through 2025 to engage our teachers. A lot of policies have been done in the ministry to ensure we meet up with contemporary needs, and one of which is that of the radical inclusion policy, which has ushered in pregnant school girls back to school, which has given the courage to disabled brothers and sisters to go back to school, which is supporting them with ramps in school. We want to ensure the physical challenge have access to their classrooms, so we're having ramps being built in all of these schools to ensure they have access to go to the classrooms. We have the school catchment area, like you rightly said from NDMA. The catchment areas helps us to identify schools in terms of density and disparities. Yes, we also have the integrated early childhood development policies, the school feeding policy, teacher management policy, and teacher development policies. There are a lot of policies that we have developed to meet up with contemporary needs. Of course, these are some of the achievements that we've made over the years, some of the gains we've made over the years with the free quality education. Enrollment is increased in the various levels. We have improvements in gender parity. We have completion rate that also improved significantly. The number of pupils passing the NPSC result, because we also try to ensure that we have MPSC centers in almost all the chiefdoms across the country to make it easy for them. And uniquely, we have also been involved in emergency. You just had NDMA making reference of us. And of course, we're one of those key actors that participated in the August 28th incident. And not only that, we're working on disaster risk reduction manual that want to get into schools, to support schools. We're working on safe schools, safe school environment for kids in school. And also a lot of responses that we've done in schools from various disasters. We've done lesson plan, we provide furniture to schools, we've done procurement of science equipment to give to schools, sporting equipment to give to schools. We recruited over 160 quality officers who were initially the inspectors of schools. We've also established centers across all chiefdoms to ensure that these guys have easy access to learning, and of course, revise the school curriculum to ensure that we meet with contemporary demands. Nonetheless, we have a couple of challenges, which is worth sharing, and some of which are, we still have classrooms that need to be furnished. Not besides the fact that we've built a couple of schools with our partners, we have inadequate trained and qualified teachers. We inherited a lot of untrained and unqualified teachers in 2018, but that has been worked out through. And also we have foundational learning tools that have been developed to ensure that we improve on early childhood development. And we have the basic management and competence skills that we've also done across the schools. We know teachers need morale, so working on their remuneration to ensure they are better paid so that they can go back to classroom. We have a challenge of the two-shift system. Because of increasing enrollment in schools, the need is urgent to build more classrooms to ensure that we accommodate. But year in, year out, we have some schools that are moving into the one-shift system. For example, this year, St. Joseph's Convent is going to one shift. FSH is already gone to one shift. Iowa has gone to one shift. Albert Academy is also on the way, my school, to go to one shift. So we are doing, better things to ensure we get these schools go to one shift school. Of course, I'll mention Albert Academy, as you know, that's the school. Then, of course, we have poor water and sanitation hygiene in school that we're still working. You have that we have schools that still don't have good water facilities, and so they do have good drop holes, toilet facilities in these schools. Without much ado, permit me to stop at this juncture. Thank you very
much. Thank you. Save for the limited time, I know you would have loved to go on, and this speaks to government's ambitious attempt. In Latin, they say res ipsa loquitur. The fact speaks for itself. With all of these that we see on the screen and the highlight shared with us, it indicates to us that President Bio's word is his bond. He promised and he delivered. This is a key manifesto commitment that he made, and this government has delivered on this. So with free education, and now with all of these interventions to add quality, I think this is one important step, and we believe that data will inform planning, and it will speak to Sierra Leone's success story locally and internationally. Peter, please can you come and just coordinate the Q&A on this? And I hope we manage the time on this.
Thank you, Minister. Hello, colleagues. I'm sure all of you guys know the drill now, right? We have two big presentations, so we'll segment the questions as well. We're starting with the NDMA.
I'm Mohammed Kamara.
Name, institution.
I'm Mohammed Kamara, the Watch, Voice of Diaspora, the Environment, and I want to recognize the presence of my presenter and producer, Skyway, here with me. My question is for Mr. Abubakura. The Honorable Deputy Minister of Information and Communication present here with us may agree with me that the responsibility of any given government in any given democracy is to protect the lives and property of its citizens, irrespective of what the opposition may think and its followers. Can I ask you, is it a violation of human rights if government is to relocate the people living in these dangerous areas forcefully? Now to the Minister of Basic and Secondary Education. You may agree with me that one we come into general elections, and one minister, President Bio, is very much proud about his performance is of basic and secondary education. We always say this, to promote you or to not to promote you depends on the information we gathered from you. I hope it insisted here that whenever you come here, you ensure that you bring this information for the benefit of the media, right? But for now, I'm sorry to say that we cannot say, in my analysis tomorrow on radio, as my presenter is here, I believe it will have a very difficult time for me to say. Thank you. But excuse me, sir, just one question. The last time the Minister of Secondary Education was here, he informed us that you were about to get about $18 million from the global education forum that he attended in London. Has it come? Would you say? Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Next question. Has he asked all the questions?
Exactly. Probably. I am Khadija to, I think everybody's seen me, even though I'm short, but I know everybody's seen me. Okay. I am Khadija to Jamno Tarawali, and I report for Sky Radio Freetown. So the first question is to NDMA. I want to know if you are working with the Sahelian Meteorological Agency, because they give their seasonal report where they call the media to give updates as to how the season is going to look like, especially for the rainy season. And I think if that report was looked into, it captures some of the way the rains will come in the month of August. I don't know if you're working with them. And I also want to know from the Ministry of Basic Senior Education to know the cost of the census. Thank you.
You mean how much money was spent?
How much money was spent on the census?
Cost is quite something quite different. You mean how much money was spent?
My question is, the Ministry of Land, Housing and Country Planning has a great role to play when it comes to disaster in our country. Just like the one that happened years back at Motome, we were there when people were claiming that they have authentic documents. And the Ministry of Lands, they are the one issuing this document. What are you doing to see that you work hand in hand with the Ministry of Lands?
Okay, next question.
Adeyemi, Justice Guardian. My question to Mr. Ba. In your presentation, you said the medical pillar under NDMA has been activated. Yesterday, when His Excellency the President went to look it up, one of the community members raised a concern that has to do with providing medicals to those that survived the August 28 incident at Looking Town. The allegation was that when they took some of the victims of the survivors to one of the hospitals around Eastern Okuba, they were rejected. And now they said that the medical pillar under NDMA has been activated. So my question is, how do you monitor some of these victims or survivors that we are taken to some of these government hospitals in terms of accessing medical facility? Also, there is this issue of building permits, which you mentioned in the presentation. The City Council, Freetown City Council, is calling on government to give them the rights to issue a building permits so that they will be able to monitor where people should build or where they should not build. And also, the Ministry of Lands as well is issuing building permits. And now you are asking people who are already built houses in some of these disaster-prone areas to come with their building permits. So how do you come between the two institutions, the City Council and the Ministry of Lands? You are asking also those that are within disaster-prone areas to see how best they can be relocated to other areas that are more safer. I know sometimes I monitor you daily and you send out early warning signs to public. But again, people are saying that instead of NDNA asking people to move from these disaster-prone areas, why don't you take the disaster areas from the people?
Okay. All right, please ensure you got the questions. Summarize, please. Just summarize. Next question, please.
Good afternoon, I'm Ishmael Dennis. What my colleague is saying that let the government or NDMA make the place habitable for citizens, those places that are not habitable presently. You cannot live there comfortably.
Are you asking a question?
No, I'm just trying to
ask your question.
Now let me ask my question. Back to the education ministry. Looking at the amount of money spent in terms of school subsidies, if you look at 2019, it is 115 million, and 2021 it is 112 million. That's a reduction. And in terms of the people intention of going to school, there was an addition. So why the reduction in the amount of money? That's what I want to ask.
Okay. Next question. Next question. I hope the two presenters are taking notes. Any more questions? Okay, in the absence of any further questions, let me call on the NDMA.
Perhaps before NDMA, on the human rights issue, I know he may be inclined to respond to it, but that's a bit off curve. But let me just speak to the principle. Chapter 3 of our Constitution, specifically sections 21 and 22, talk about guaranteeing privacy to home or property. So, for example, you cannot effect a search, or you cannot enter into the premises of another without the consent of that person. But if you look specifically to those key sections, you know, the same way that the state or the law gives you rights on one hand, will also take away some of those rights with another hand. So those sections 21 and 22 have key exceptional circumstances under which the state could limit your rights even to property. So, for example, some of those exceptional circumstances could be in the interest of defense, public order, public morality, public safety, and also for the purpose of town and county planning. So the law even envisages exceptional circumstances under which the state could have access to your own property. So for us, I think it's a question of looking at your right to property on the one hand, but also balancing it against exceptional or justifiable circumstances under which the state could now reason with you to say, look, we appreciate and understand that you have a right to property, but given these justifiable circumstances, we think we should now strike an understanding with you to see why it is important for you. Like given the situation, for example, government, one of our primordial responsibility is to protect lives. When Elba was doing the presentation, I mean, looking at that boulder alone, and you see people living, some people would try to say, hey, government will not go touch them. But if the same boulder go kill them people, then they are going to shout as if government has been irresponsible. So I think it's a game of balance, but our people should understand that indeed there is a fundamental right to property, but there could be justifiable circumstances under which the state could now come in and make some interventions.
Okay. Sorry, I want to take this opportunity to ask one question.
All right.
For NDMA. I saw anticipation of tree planting. I don't know if you're aware about the 1 million tree transform Freetown project. Are you guys working in collaboration with the Freetown City Council?
That's it.
That's what I want to ask. All right, so the floor is open, sir.
All right. Thank you very much for your brilliant questions. For the forceful relocation, let me just put it that way, forceful relocation. Like the minister said, the intricacies hovering around the issue of relocation is so cumbersome. You understand? It's so difficult. These are Sierra Leoneans. These are human beings. They are there. So if government should relocate them, definitely government should provide an alternative. So let's say, for example, if NDMA we have to go down to Kobe and remove everybody that possibly, where do you think they go? So once they on the street. No. So what we have been doing, we have mapped out the 3 disaster-prone communities, and we have been developing adaptive measures. That was why we mentioned about mobile. You understand? At least because for the time being, this is where they are. So we are devising strategies for them to adapt. And also the decision for people to relocate, it's not just going to come from NDMA alone. That is going to be interagency, interministerial approach, or maybe from top to bottom approach from governments. You understand? Let me give you an example. The Motomoy incident in 2017. Of course, I think 2 or 3 Sierra Leoneans, indigenous, volunteered to construct some housing units for the victims at Mile 6. Up to date, they are still struggling. They are grappling with basic amenities. They don't have toilet. They don't have market. They don't have any amenity at all. It is only now when NDMA was established, we are now working with the African Union to ensure that we provide some basic facilities for them. So that is that, understand. So we have been focusing more on the areas of adaptive measures for us to ensure that those people adapt, where they are at the moment. For those that are at high risk, we have been taking action. We have really been taking action. So on the first location, just so you know. And of course, I could remember vividly, I think it was during the late president's era, Jankaba. I think today, I cannot speak to these, authoritatively, but I know for sure that they were relocated. But because we are dating them too, the facilities were not there, so they returned it. You understand? So we don't want to find ourselves in that situation. For the medic, yes, indeed, the medical pillar was activated. Just like when the Wellington fire incident, report, we activated the medical pillar and government provided free medical to them. What happened on that day was that they didn't know that they were to come to the Connaught Hospital. That is mixed up, you understand? But that has been taken care of. Yeah. Yes, they will continue receiving treatment. Our collaboration with plants, I will use the SLMET for Director Bangura. And building permits. So for our collaboration with Ministry of Lands, like I told you earlier, they're actually heading a whole pillar, doing our, we have various pillars that we've established during the emergencies and all of that. And Ministry of Lands, Ministry of Lands is the pillar lead of that particular pillar. And it is difficult though to say because, to be honest with ourselves, the issues have been there for the longest time. Poor planning, people building beyond the marketed zones and all of that, you understand? So for us to get it right, we have to start from somewhere. And we are closely working with the Ministry of Lands to ensure that we do, because I also understand that they are also working on a project to develop building codes. So once you want to construct a house, they will issue out a code. Before giving out the code, they will have gone to the particular area and ensure that that particular place is fit and proper for you to go ahead to construction. So we are working. Hopefully, we are hopeful that we'll get it right and moving forward because the problems have been there, like I said earlier, for the longest time. So for us to get it right automatically will be very difficult. You understand? Taking all of these issues into consideration. But what we are doing is to go into those communities, especially for those newly constructed structures that are coming up now. We put a stop to it like we've been doing. For those that are at very high risk, we ask them to relocate or we force them to relocate. That would be good. Yeah. So for the level of cooperation, we have been working with Ministry of Lands. I will now hand over the mic to the Director of Research to answer the other questions.
Well, you've done justice to nearly all the questions. For the question on Met Sierra Leone, we are working in very, very close collaboration. Even the early warning tool we are going to build is a joint project with Met, because Met will have to be providing us the weather and climate data, and they are the only institution mandated by law to give climate or weather data If any other person gives me climate or weather data and I use it and it proves wrong, someone can sue me to court for that. With regards to the issue of building permits and FCC, the mayor has been asking every time she goes on radio for building permits. But extreme weather events are posing a test to building permits. We have London, New York flooding at the moment. Is it a function of building permit or is it a function of extreme weather events? Some of the houses, whether we have a new building permit, whether government devolves building construction to the FCC or to the councils, when those places want to flood, those houses were built in places where they had all their documents correct. What NDMA pushes for is a community approach. We can give you an instance. The issue at the fuel depot. Our approach as NDMA, what we did was we called the councillor, we called the MP, we called the elders, we called influencers in the communities, and we brought them together in a hall. We engaged them and showed them the threats they are living under. And it will interest you to know that most of them are ready to move. If you can visit the wall where APP is standing at the moment, they have moved voluntarily. They asked their honorable to help them talk to the fuel company to provide them land, and there was some form of compensation, and they moved. So at times, we think people are resistant to change, but we have not tried maybe giving them data and information for them to take a decision. When we showed the imam and the pastors the fear that is sitting on top of them, they themselves told us that they will go and engage their people and they will get back to us. What the challenge we faced was there was this issue of the hike in fuel prices, and you will not have a hike in fuel prices and everybody edgy, and then you go and start talking about relocation in a volatile community. That was what kept us at bay. Thank you.
So briefly on the building the permits, it's only meant for Buma, those that have constructed houses around Buma, not for the entire country, please. So those are the documents that we are currently collecting. Of course, you know that there's a committee being instituted now by the president to investigate, those that have constructed houses, especially around Buma. So that, yes, around those areas, that poses threats to the existence of Buma. So that is where the focus is. Thank you. Yes, for the tea planting, well, what we have been doing, I think that falls a little bit outside the mandate of NDMA, to express an opinion on. Yes, we are that there is a project with the City Council to actually, plant trees, but we have not been involved, in that particular process as an agency. We have not been involved. So what we have been doing is to ensure that we encourage people to, I actually don't want to express opinion on that.
Our tree planting approach also is going to be community based. If you look when it rains now, because people are stripping the forest, the gutters are silted, are filled with silt. And if you notice, people that have trees in their compound, the trees hold the soils together. So our approach is going to be encourage citizens to voluntarily plant trees. Instead of relying on a government tree planting program, if you plant a mango tree today, 5 years down the line, you will eat from that mango tree. If you plant a cashew today, 3 years down the line, you will eat from that cashew. So that is going to be our approach. We don't want to legalize most of our activities to the point that people see that they are being forced to do what they are doing. If everybody in Sierra Leone volunteers, maybe in Freetown, decides to plant a tree every year, you will not need an elaborate program of these trees or these trees. We'll have trees growing naturally in our country and saving our environment. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much for your questions. Though I was expecting really more questions from the journalists and even challenging questions. Well, challenging questions, though. Asking me the cost of the census is $2 million. That will include paying the allowances of the enumerators, validators, getting some power banks, getting the DSAs. We have to buy the server space.
2 million new money.
2 million the new money. 2 billion euros. For which economically is cost effective, because if we have free subsidies increasing pro rata on the geometric rate from 50 billion to 60 billion in a term, and 60 billion to 62 billion means in every other time we're having 2 billion increase, then it's worth investing 2 billion to ensure that you get the actual data. So it's cost effective. So we spend that for the annual school census. Then you also asked the question of why is it that we recorded 115 million of the new loans in 2019, and in 2021 we had 2022 we recorded 2021 we recorded yes, and why the retention rate goes up. All right, now let's get the logic around this. In 2019 we recorded that for 3 times, and in 2021 it was paid for 2 times. We have data for 2 times. But then again, there's something going on that is worth interesting to share with you. We checked out the retention rate in school. We realized for primary and JSS, it seems normal. It's going on a normal frequency, 80 something percent. But at the SS level, it shoots up to 128%. You know what's happening? Those guys who have even sat to the O-level exams are now going back to school because it's free quality education. Go and write the exams under government, and then they will be counted as pupils in schools.
That was why we had over 206,000 candidates.
Yes, there's a normal number of candidates that we had in those schools. And even interestingly, some guys are moving from private schools to go into government schools to write the exams, on the pretext that it's easier to pass government exams than to pass the private exams. Well, you can have it as free FRAE, but it's not free per se, because when you get to the schools, the schools will demand money for you to write the exams on at the school. While it's a double dipping, while they receive those monies, government is also paying for those candidates. So it's something we need to inject into the system. And you had also asked about $18 million. I'm afraid that I will not be able to answer you that question. It may have happened that the Honorable Minister has received that from the General Global Partnership for Education. But we've got a bundle of funds that comes around the ministry to steer up education development. But I'll allow my colleague from the communications unit to just throw light on that.
All right, thank you. I want to say that the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education is open to the public. When such money is coming, you will have a press release out. You will hear us on TV, see us on TV and the radio. So the money is yet not in. That's why we do not have from us. And I'm sorry to also say that I understand that you needed the hard copies of the presentation, but we can still make it available to you on the www.mbssc.gov.sl. You go there and you have the annual school census analysis. www.mbssc.gov.sl. Thank you.
And sorry, I've not exposed the ministry that much, that we've got a lot of repository that you can tap through. One, if you go to that platform, mbssc.gov.sl, you have a lot of information. We've also have the education data hub that was developed by the DSTI team to support us. And we're currently working on an integrated system in the education sector. That is for MBSSC, MTHE, and the Teaching Service Commission. We have developed the education information system, which takes a whole lot of information from these 3 institutions. So like it's a one-stop shop they can also tap into. And there you can also have something on the learning passport. You can also have these tools that I've just introduced on the annual school census, all being residing in that same platform. So there are a whole lot of things that you can tap into. Thank you, Rich.
Okay, I think this is the most appropriate time to draw down the curtains. Thank you very much, colleagues, for attending this press conference. So, the press conference is closed. Thank you very much.